Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to go over one quality that I see come up a lot in research when I'm researching these videos about one quality that seems to make men overall extremely attractive for long term relationships or mating from an evolutionary psychology perspective. All of the research is going to be in the description box, but that's kind of the main thing I wanted to talk about as to why this particular trait is very attractive for partnership for men to have or to possess. And that trait actually is, it's not kindness and it's not necessarily altruism, but it's more like giving, even though it is kindness and I would say pro-social behavior. But the context of men being, I guess, sacrificial. And from that perspective, we can imagine not just evolutionary psychology or psychology in general, but biologically. Men tend to be more giving in these types of relationships because often he's going to take that dominant perspective in families, in his relationship, etc. And so that's kind of some of the qualities that we see when looking at research. One of the most common characteristics for attractiveness in mate choice, particularly if he's a male. Now, we're going to talk about why that is and all of the research that kind of signifies this. So, one research was done in 2019 that actually showed that women prefer altruistic men, especially for long-term relationships, to which men who are, I guess, I don't know how to explain it, men who might be perceived as more attractive, him also being giving, can create desirability. However, men who might be perceived as less attractive physically based on other components are still perceived as desirable based on the fact that he's willing to give or sacrifice. Again, we had kind of looked at, this is from a biological perspective, she likely subconsciously invests in these types of men because it allows her to feel like he's going to give not just to her, but if they have a family. And so she feels like she could be taken care of. I believe that's where it comes from. It wasn't necessarily defined in this particular research, but we're going to see more. However, this research had targeted specifically females who are attracted to men, obviously, right? And I think that was a very interesting perspective. Another perspective that we could highlight on this shows in 2018 that the context is of mating, right? So reproductive rights. There were 2 experiments that were done, okay? So men's preferences for a male's preferences for females were very context dependent, to which it was dependent on either long-term or short-term. So for short-term, he might have a different preference than for a long-term, if that makes sense. That's what this research showed. However, for females, her particularly for both long-term and short-term, if she's mentally healthy, mentally stable women tend to prefer and find it very desirable if a man is able to be giving or comfortable in flexibility, not inflexibility, but showing flexibility in social situations, particularly romantic dynamics. This is for both short-term and long-term relationships, different from men where they tend to be a little bit more specific dependent, okay? Context dependent. Females not as much, okay? The next research was done in 2013, to which actually it reported that helping behavior, or what we might call as giving, right? Selfless behavior, shows that in long-term contexts, long-term intimacy type of relationships, those types of things, mating behaviors, not just evolutionary biology, but evolutionary psychology, it found that actually both men and women prefer partners that tend to be more giving, more genuine, and more willing to compromise, okay? And actually, this attractiveness was even more increased when that particular man was described as engaging in helpful behaviors. I think a lot of people know this, where you might see a male, he's engaging in, maybe he's donating money or whatever it is. It shows that he has a lot of assets, but also it shows that he's willing to help other people. And in her mind, from a mating perspective, it makes her feel like she can invest in this particular person. And so it's very beneficial. Another one could be, I'm not sure if you've seen this, but I certainly have, where if he's volunteering, that can be seen as very attractive, right? Maybe he's going to different countries and giving to other less fortunate folks. Maybe he is on some sort of mission, whatever it may be. A lot of women find that extremely attractive. I just thought that was really interesting. And a lot of you guys asked about it. Another research kind of backed this up as well. And this was particularly about the value of women, but also men, how they perceive themselves. I'm going to explain it, okay? This research was done in 2016, where actually it showed, this study examined how a man with the value of himself to be caring and giving is actually extremely attractive. And it's kind of in the sense where he outwardly declares it. I'm trying to explain it. His personal value is that he never wants to, let's say, for example, if somebody's getting bullied, he's going to stand up for them no matter what. This particular type of thing is very attractive, particularly for males targeted for long-term contexts and mating contexts, if you guys know what I mean. This can be very attractive because she feels like not only is he able to be, I guess, dominant in these social situations. That's how I took it. That particular perspective wasn't necessarily cited in this research. It was in another one. But in these types of situations, it shows that he's confident. That definitely was mentioned. But it predicts desirability for long-term situations and mating situations as well. He's able to be giving to other folks who might need him for whatever reason, right? That's kind of the perspective that we're looking at. The next research was done in 2010, to which it showed particularly where males are trustworthy and kind are associated with attractiveness and dominance, interesting enough. So there is some research that aggression can be seen as dominant, but a lot of individuals, at least for this particular research, it cited that a man who is trustworthy and kind can be perceived as dominant because he's trying to control his natural aggression. I don't know if that comes across offensive. I'm not saying you guys are aggressive. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying from a biological perspective, men tend to be more aggressive than their female counterparts. But if he's trying to be trustworthy and kind, this can be showing a sign of, how would I even word it? He's trying to control himself, and he's able to do that. Whereas if he's losing control, that may look a little bit unattractive for mentally healthy females typically, okay? The next research was 2019, and this one was across cultures, right? I'm from the United States. I prefer research that's done in my country, United States, because it's easier for me to understand the social dynamics. But I think different models can help as well. And this particular one was across cultures, and it showed that kindness was among the top characteristics of individuals who are in healthy and long-term partners. And so basically men who are husbands and who tend to be happy in marriages, they tend to be perceived as kind to their female counterpart. So we can kind of assume based on that, that likely a lot of females find males who are kind and giving and dominant from that perspective very attractive. And this research, the last one, that one was done in 2019. The next one I'm going to go over is 2024, which basically shows, as we've discussed in another research, any pro-social behavior makes men actually appear more physically attractive to observers. This was literally researched, that men who are doing kind things are literally observed and considered more attractive, and they have a stronger possibility of being approached by particular women, or a stronger sense of relational context to which she would want to commit to him. So I hope this video was helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I will see you in the next one.